Hello and welcome to our office hours presentation today. This is Paul Hoyt, welcoming you to office hours. Our office hours presentations are a relaxed, informal mentoring program that we do every Monday at noon Pacific time. All these recordings, slides, and any exercises and handouts that we have will be available in the members area of our website, and then all the recordings, just the recordings, are available on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/Paul Hoyt. The reason I do these is because I know that being a successful small business owner can be a great experience, but I also know that it's tough, that you really need education, training, tools, and team to be successful, and I want you to get to know me, because when you get to know me, you'll know that I really do care about you, and I want you to succeed in every area of your life, whatever that means to you. I want you to find the greatness, the happiness, the divinity within yourself, and then remember it, embrace it, and live it every day as I do. My passion is to increase the survival rate, accelerate the growth rate, and reduce the struggle rate of businesses in America, and my vision is to help millions of CEOs and entrepreneurs accelerate their business growth and enjoy greater harmony and balance in their lives. And you can help by passing the word. If you find that these webinars are beneficial to you, gosh, there'll be 72 of them at the end of the day available on my YouTube channel. Just reach out to a friend, reach out to your network in some way and say, hey, check this out, because there's a lot of good stuff here. Our office hours agendas are usually an in-depth discussion of a business success principle, then closing remarks and special offers, and an invitation for next week's session. And then we have open question and answers and coaching. While we are on this presentation, join us in the Brilliant Business groups on both Facebook and LinkedIn. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/groups/Brilliant Business. And on LinkedIn, we have a special link for that. It's bit.ly/Brilliant Business Group. And I invite you to join us there, because I do a business success principle of the day posting on Facebook and LinkedIn 4 days a week, and the energy of the day posting on Facebook every day. During the call today, it's our goal for you to make comments and questions and share insights and takeaways on our Facebook group, and the goal is to have 20 comments and likes in the Facebook group today. So if you're on your computer, which you may be during the call, if you have an extra window, or you can in another little window, go to facebook.com, get into the Brilliant Business group, and make your comments. And let's see what we can't do about making this an interactive call between the people who are listening to it live. Next Wednesday, a week from Wednesday rather, we're going to do another introductory webinar to my new Awakened CEO system. That's on Wednesday, April the 16th at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Watch your emails for sign-up information. We did our first one on March the 18th, and it's my intention to do a live introductory call every month, at least for a while, to give people an opportunity to ask questions and for us to have some discussions around the Awakened CEO system and what it really means and what that can mean to you and the value that it brings to the folks that I have the privilege of working with. Today's topic is going to be on the science of increasing entrepreneurial success, one of the things that I am absolutely passionate about. And today's topic is based on the book, Investing in Entrepreneurs, A Strategic Approach to Strengthening Your Regional and Community Economy, published in 2010 by Gregg Lichtenstein and Thomas Lyons, both PhDs. One of the most inspirational and educational and informative books I've ever read in my life, and it's a pleasure for me to share that with you. As always, I relate the subject matter of the day to one or more of the key performance areas, and this one's all about leadership. It's about you as the leader of your business, as a small business owner, as a CEO, and an entrepreneur, understanding what it means to be successful and what the critical success factors are so that you can incorporate them into your growth strategies. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the authors, and we're going to talk about guiding principles that they have in the book. We'll talk about their key beliefs, the skills ladder, some guidance for communities and economic development councils, and then we're going to sum it all up to the bottom line. First of all, Gregg Lichtenstein, PhD, got his doctorate from Wharton in entrepreneurship in 1992. He has been an entrepreneur and the CEO at a business called Collaborative Strategies since 1991 and has other ventures as well. He's one of those academicians who really practices what he preaches. He not only teaches other people, but he also puts that into practice himself. I met Gregg in December of 2006 at a CEO Space Growth Conference, and he looked me up right away when he saw that I had the book, The Foundations Factor, because one of his key principles and beliefs, as you'll see here in just a little bit, is that he believes that entrepreneurs can be built, they can be made, they just aren't born that way. And one of the keys to making an entrepreneur successful is to get them the proper education. So he really liked the book Foundation Factor. He shared with me a book that he had written, which was very similar about best practices in business, and we began a long relationship. It was my privilege to actually be on the editorial board for the book Investing in Entrepreneurs. So I got to see the book, 5 months before it was published, and we went through it chapter by chapter, week by week for a period of about 12 weeks. He had a team of reviewers come on every Friday morning, and we'd talk for a couple of hours about what made sense in those particular set of chapters and what didn't. So it was my privilege not only to see the book before other people did, but also make a suggestion or two that ended up in the final book itself. His partner is a gentleman named Thomas Lyons, PhD, who is also on those review calls. He got his doctorate from University of Michigan in 1987. He's currently a professor at Baruch College with the City University of New York, and he's extremely well published. If you go look at this gentleman's LinkedIn profile, there are literally a couple of dozen different books and articles that he has written. Together, these two gentlemen, Lichtenstein and Lyons, PhDs both, are probably two of the most educated people that I've ever even heard of, much less had the chance to talk to, about the science of increasing entrepreneurial success. They've taken all of the work that they have created, all of the studies, all of the academic treatises that they've read and studied, and pulled them into this particular book, Investing in Entrepreneurs, which is absolutely sensational. I don't know of any other works that I have seen by academicians anywhere on the planet that has the level of sophistication and the level of credibility that they offer in this particular book. Not only that, is that they took these principles and they've put them into practice in several different ways. Some of the ways that they have put these into practice is that they have taken these principles and had tremendous grants, like multi-million-dollar grants from the Kellogg Foundation and other foundations, and put them into practice in various counties and communities and economic development centers across the United States. Gregg, when I talked to him last, was doing an extremely large project for the province of Saskatchewan in Canada, where that state, we call it a state if it was in the United States, but that province had engaged the services of his firm, Collaborative Strategies, to go in and help improve entrepreneurial success throughout that province. So they practice what they preach. They're extremely well studied, and it would behoove anybody who really cares about entrepreneurial success in America, in their particular community, to understand the knowledge and what I call the science of entrepreneurial success that they've come up with. One of the things that they came up with when they created this book was several guiding principles. First of all, they wanted to generate actionable knowledge in order to be efficient and effective in working with entrepreneurs. They just didn't want to study it, but they wanted to come up with stuff that you could really put into action and use to help improve success rates of entrepreneurs. They wanted to act entrepreneurially when they were doing that. So as they did these studies and as they did these prototype and concept tests that they did, they acted as entrepreneurs themselves and created their own business, in Gregg's case, Collaborative Strategies, in order to not only teach entrepreneurs, but to be an entrepreneur and to take the principles and the science that they had developed and put them into effect, into practice in their own businesses. They wanted to build systemic solutions for individual entrepreneurs and communities of entrepreneurs, In other words, systems that other people could use and deploy for their benefit. And finally, they wanted to produce transformational changes, which means they really wanted to make a significant difference in the lives of entrepreneurs and in the communities that they were serving. Now, why is this important? It's important in the United States because businesses with less than 500 employees account for 99% of all employers and 75% of all new jobs and 50% of the gross domestic product and 55% of all innovations. So very large companies, of course, contribute a tremendous amount to the economy of the United States. They have a tremendous impact on the number of innovations because they can afford to have, dozens or hundreds or even thousands of research scientists working on the next great thing. The Apple, the Google, the Facebook, the IBMs of the planet, the General Motors, all of those folks, Lockheed Martin, they have a tremendous number of employees and a tremendous number of scientists, but they don't create most of the new jobs. 75% of the new jobs are from small businesses. That's one of the reasons I think it's extremely important for we as a country to focus on the success of small businesses in the United States. I think that's where a tremendous amount of the health of our economy comes from. But unfortunately, what we see with so many companies out there and chambers of commerce that try to support entrepreneurs is that they don't know how to develop entrepreneurial skills. They just encourage. And in developing implies that they would have systems in place to increase competencies and effectiveness and success over time. But instead, so many of the organizations that we look to increase entrepreneurial success are more of an encourager than they are a developer. They're like 80% attaboy, go get them, keep your nose to the grindstone, don't give up kind of attitude, which I think are really important messages, but they don't have the other part of it, which is the development. Here's how you develop your skill set. Here's the skills that you really need. Here's a step-by-step approach to get you from where you are today to where you really need to be in order to be successful in your business. That development is missing in most communities out there today. Mr. Lyons and Mr. Lichtenstein had 3 cornerstone beliefs when they developed their system and as they tested it in the marketplace. First one was that entrepreneurs are successful to the extent that they have the necessary skills. I think that that's a no-brainer, but what, again, we see from most people who support entrepreneurs is they talk about your enthusiasm and your mindset and your willpower, as opposed to talking about whether you're really trained for the job of being an entrepreneur. We wouldn't think to suggest to somebody that they go fly a 747 or drive a car or do something important, run a tank, for example, in the military. We wouldn't think that to suggest that somebody's enthusiasm alone would be enough to allow them to be successful in any of those environments, those jobs that require a pretty good skill set. Yet every day we encourage people to go out and start their own business without any consideration at all about whether or not the skill set that they have matches up to the complexity and the skill set requirements of the business that they want to start. Another key belief that the gentlemen have is that entrepreneurs come to their entrepreneurship with different levels of skills. So somebody that's just graduated from high school or just graduated from college, by definition, has less experience than somebody that has worked in corporate America for 30 years or 40 years, or somebody that's had a turn at starting and growing their own business. So entrepreneurs almost always come with different skill sets, and oftentimes there's a gap in between the skill set that they have and the skill set that is required by the job. And the third key belief is the one I really love, and that is that entrepreneurial skills can be developed, that this is a learned something. It's not something that you're born with, and that leaders can be made, CEOs can be made, entrepreneurs, successful small business owners can be developed over time, that you just don't have to push somebody into the water and have a prayer that they're going to learn how to swim. They use a really interesting approach when it comes to talking about the skill set of entrepreneurs. They talk about a skills ladder, and the analogy that they really love to use, and I think this is Gregg's analogy, even more so than Thomas's, is what they call the entrepreneurial league system, built around the way that we create professional baseball players in the United States. When we think that somebody out of high school or college could be a successful professional baseball player, we put them in rookie leagues where they're playing with other rookies and being coached by people who are good at coaching rookies. Then as their skill set increases and they're able to demonstrate that they're able to do so, we move them up into the A leagues and then into the AA and then into the AAA, and only a few of them ever get to the major leagues. But they come out of a major league farm system that's been around for 150 years or so, ever since Major League Baseball started being played, I think in the late 1800s. And it really makes sense for us when we think about the skill set of entrepreneurs to use a very similar approach. That, hey, maybe if somebody wants to go into business for themselves and they don't have any experience at all, maybe we put them into a job that a rookie can do successfully, or have them own a business that a rookie can manage successfully. And then as they gain in skill set, we can expand that business and increase the complexity of the business, or they can sell the business and move on to a more complex business, and so on, until they have, as a serial entrepreneur, maybe started 3 or 4 or 5 businesses, each one of them with increasing complexity, so that when they get to a business that is of a pretty good size and has a great deal of complexity, that they actually have the skill set, the mindset, and the experience necessary to be successful with that. And when it comes to the skill set, they define 4 different dimensions of skills. The technical skills, which is actually knowing the nuts and the bolts and how to get things done, specifically with regards to delivery of the job in the back office. The managerial skills, which is the recruiting, the motivating, and the managing, the delegating, the prioritizing, the collaborating with members on your team. The entrepreneurial skills, which means, do you really have the leadership? Are you a visionary person? Can you think out of the box and lead in a different direction, in an innovative and unique style? And the last one of my favorites, is personal maturity. Some people, when they start their own businesses, have a lot more personal maturity than other people do. And what personal maturity really provides you is, first of all, better relationships. If you're not a very mature person, if you have a big temper, then you really have to be a genius and really do phenomenal work, or people are not going to hang around. People don't hang around other folks who have a lot of shadow energy, negative energy, a lot of angry energy, unless there is an extremely good reason to hang around them. And usually that extremely good reason is that they're making tremendous progress in their business. We have a tendency to cut people slack whenever they're incredibly successful. But what I really prefer, and what my Awakened CEO system is all about, is that we can be a great person. We can be a joyful person, a kind person, a compassionate person, a direct person, a mature person, and be a very successful entrepreneur at the same time. So what they have seen when they assess the skill set of the folks in their particular system is that they always try to assess the personal maturity, because they know that it takes a great deal of personal maturity, more personal maturity, to run a business of any size and scale than it does to run a very small business with only a few people there. Again, they say that it's really not about the talent, it's about practice. It's about deep practice and getting 10,000 hours of practice so that you can develop world-class skill. That was this 10,000 hour rule. I'm not really sure where it came about. There was a book called Blink, I believe it was, by Malcolm Gladwell, that talked about the 10,000 hour rule. that allowed people to really be good at what they do. And if you had 10,000 hours of experience, which by the way is about 5 years full-time, we figure there's about 2,000 hours of full-time work a year. For entrepreneurs, that's really 2,000 hours in 6 months, right? Because we're working 70 or 80 hours a week rather. So, but 3 or 4 years of deep practice, of effective practice, of practicing the right skills can give you a tremendous amount of expertise when it comes to running your own business. So don't think of it as something that you can be proficient at on day one. Think of it as a talent or a skill set that you can acquire over time with practice, and know that it's going to take you 3 or 4 or even 5 years with the right mentoring and coaching before you can become a really effective CEO and entrepreneurs. What they really specify is that it's really about making the match. And for those of you who have seen my program, the Business Survival Boot Camp, you'll recognize this slide, and I use it in a lot of the presentations, because this is one of the keys of their message, is that if you take a rookie and give them a simple business, they can be successful. But to be successful with a massively complex business, it really takes a master. It takes somebody that has years and years of experience, a lot of personal maturity, a lot of technical skills, relationship skills, managerial skills, in order to be successful at that enterprise. In my program, the Business Survival Boot Camp, I go a little bit further and I talk about business complexity profiles. Again, this is not from their book, but rather one of the innovations that I have added and extended to the work that they have done, is the ability to really analyze businesses and determine what the skill set that is required for that particular business, with the knowledge that some businesses are a lot more complex than other ones. In fact, I did an office hours presentation. Office hours number 37 was on business complexity profiles, and I gave a lot of examples and explained it in a great deal of detail in that office hours presentation. So if you haven't done so already, let me invite you to review office hours number 37. Whenever they approach an entrepreneur, they say there's very specific steps that you need to go through. First one is that we appraise your skill level. And I'll add to that, you appraise the skill level relative to the complexity of the business that the business owner is thinking about starting. And you match entrepreneurs and opportunities once you understand what the skill level is of the entrepreneur. Are they a rookie? Are they an A, a double A, a triple A, or are they ready to go into the major leagues? And then we coach the entrepreneurs in the same way that we would coach somebody that was going to be a professional baseball player. Just a word about coaching here. That coaches vary in skills too. That some coaches work well with startups, but others do not. Some coaches work well with very large businesses, and others do not. A good match is absolutely critical. I'll go a little bit further than that. I have seen some people who are only used to working in corporate America try to be coaches of startup businesses, and they essentially doom the startup business to failure, because a startup business is not just a smaller version of a large business. It's a completely different animal. It takes a completely different mindset and skill set on the part of the entrepreneur and on the part of the coach in order to make a good match there. So just because somebody's been a vice president of marketing at a large corporation doesn't mean they're going to be a good marketing consultant to a startup business. Just because somebody's been a VP of human resources at a company that had 25,000 employees doesn't mean they're going to be a good small business person themselves or a good consultant in the HR practices for very small micro businesses. It really does need to be a match. Again, much like there is in professional baseball, the same talent for the coach that would be effective in coaching a World Series champion is not the talent, is not the mindset, is not the skill set that you would apply to somebody in the A leagues or in the rookie leagues at all. Now, this particular book, as you may have noticed by the title, is really focused on communities and regional economies. So their message to communities, to chambers of commerce, to economic development councils, to cities, to state organizations, is invest in developing your entrepreneurs. think about building a community of entrepreneurs and consider all of the businesses that exist and all of the businesses that are in the startup modes or even in the thinking modes as a pipeline of entrepreneurs and a portfolio of related assets. Take a portfolio approach to all of the businesses that are in your particular community and invest in the conditions necessary to effectively manage the pipeline. Here's another picture from their book about the entrepreneurial pipeline. They say that the pipeline has multiple stages of business in it, like stage 0 being pre-venture, stage 1 meaning that it's in existence, stage 2 meaning that it's early growth, stage 3 is in expansion mode, stage 4 is in maturity, and stage 5 is in decline. If you took the portfolio of all of the businesses in your regional community, you would find them scattered amongst these 6 different stages. Likewise, you would see some of them guided by major leaguers, and some of them by AAA players, and some of them by AA players as well. So their encouragement is for a community to take a look at this portfolio of assets, which is the small businesses in their particular town, and rate them according to this schedule. Put them somewhere in this pipeline so you understand how that business can be expanded and grown, how the entrepreneur can be developed so that the business will contribute more to the community and to the economy, will be able to be profitable so that they can hire people and pay greater taxes and support the community in the ways that socially responsible companies do. But here's the bottom line. The bottom line of this book is, number one is that entrepreneurs can be developed, and taking a developmental approach to the entrepreneurs that you know and to yourself, to say to yourself, my entrepreneurial skills can be developed over time, and I want to find a way to make that happen, is a really critical aspect of the bottom line. Entrepreneurs can be developed. Matching the skill set, the mindset, and the experience of the entrepreneur to the complexity of the business model is the absolute key. And that coaches and mentors must also be managed to the entrepreneur and the business. If you take the attitude that entrepreneurs can be developed, that you know that every business has a different complexity to it, and you need to make sure that your skill set, mindset, and experience matches up well to the complexity of the business that you want to start, and you need to get yourself a coach who really understands where you are in your development and the complexity of your particular business, that it really will increase the business success, your probability of success, the probability of success of all of the entrepreneurs in your community. So that was our agenda today. We talked a little bit about the authors, and hopefully you understand the credibility that they have and the respect that I have for them in, their 33 years now, no, 23 years of really understanding what it takes for entrepreneurs to be successful. We talked about I'll go back a little bit. We talked about their guiding principles. We talked about their key beliefs. We talked about their skills ladder. We talked about their messages for community, and then summed it up with the bottom line. So here's your homework and your exercises. Bottom line, get the book and read it. Whenever I do a book review of a great book that I have read, I really encourage you to go out and get the book and read it for yourself, because my reviews in these 30 minutes or so are just a highlight. There's golden nuggets in that book for you and you personally that you didn't get out of this session. So I encourage you to go and get the book and read it for yourself if you are interested in developing your own entrepreneurial skills at all. If you have connections to chambers and commerce and economic development councils, introduce them to the book. Say, hey, you should really read this book because it's going to help your entire community. And I encourage you to review my Business Survival Bootcamp, because I took these concepts and principles, I added to them a great deal in the Business Survival Bootcamp, and really talked about what I think it takes to increase the survival rate, the success rate, and reduce the struggle rate of businesses in America in the Business Survival Bootcamp. It's only about an hour-long program. If you haven't watched it recently, then go back and watch it again. I know that you'll get something out of it. And I encourage you to have a serial entrepreneur mindset. So if you're just starting in business and you're in your first business, think about it as your first business. Because if you think about it as your first business, you're going to be more willing to have a business that matches up with your skill set and your mindset. Because when you have this thought that, I'm going to start a simple business, I'm going to do a car wash, I'm going to do, a very simple business, a coaching business, but my next business might be a little more complex. It might be a retail store, a flower shop, for example. Or I may decide to do business in a larger and more expansive way. If you have a serial entrepreneur mindset, thinking that your business today is not going to be the only business that you ever start, it really facilitates taking a developmental approach to your own entrepreneurial skill set. Also encourage you to ask yourself, this is an interesting question, ask yourself, what type of business and what size of business would be a good fit for my experience, skill set, and lifestyle choices? What I see a lot in my particular industry is people blindly encouraging people without any consideration at all to what sort of business would be a good match for them, not only in terms of their skill set and their experience and their mindset, but also in terms of their lifestyle choices. There are some businesses, for example, that just require you to work 100 hours a week and you're on the road and it's international travel and you never have an opportunity to see your wife and kids because that's what's required of being a CEO of that particular type of business. There are other businesses you can do from home and you get a totally different lifestyle than one that requires you to be in a corporate office 7 days a week or on the road week after week after week. Stephanie and I both know people that are on the road 3 or 4 weeks a month trying to do everything they can to build their business. And the big question is, does that business requirement really match up with the way that you want to live your life? We only get one life. We should live it the way that we want to, something that really floats our boat and really invigorates us and excites us. And then once you have asked yourself that question, create a plan to develop your entrepreneurial skills and get coaching and support to manage the process if you need it. We're going to jump into open questions and answer and coaching in just a minute. I know you caught the enthusiasm that I had for this particular subject. I hope that you've got questions in there. And if you haven't already, I invite you to go to the Facebook group and, ask a question or make a comment or two so we can get a little interaction going at the Facebook community for the balance of the call today. I want you to make comments and questions on the topic of the day here live and in the Facebook group, and then any other issues that you have. And tell me what your biggest takeaways are, what insights you got from the presentation, and tell me what you're going to focus on. Here at the Hoyt Management Group, we have a variety of support services, education, training, coaching, advising, mentoring services, consulting services, and what we call growth management services in a matrix that allows us to teach you and train you so that you can do it for yourself. A whole other set of engagements we have is a do-it-with-you model where we help you create the plans and help you execute those plans. And occasionally we have a do-it-for-you model as well, where you can just say, please go do this task, and we'll do it to the best of our ability and deliver it on time with the highest quality. As a reminder, the Awaken CEO System introductory webinar is going to be on April 16th. Check your emails, social media, or call me for more information. I'd love for you to show up live and in person to learn about the Awaken CEO System and the difference that it can make in your life. Next Monday, we're going to do another office hours presentation on Monday, April the 13th, and the subject's going to be business intelligence and creating a data-driven business. Let me know what other subtopics that you'd like for me to address at paulsurvey.com, and in between now and the time we meet again, please do your homework. And with that, I'm going to take a breath, and we're going to open up the rest of the conversation to questions and answers and coaching and discussion. Stephanie, do we have any questions or comments?
We do. First one. After purchasing the book and reading it, what would be a good practice? One important step to start off with?
I think a really good important step is to get somebody on your team that can help you assess your own skill set relative to the complexity of the business model, right? That's one of their key beliefs and principles, is that it takes a really good match to increase your comfort level in your business and your probability of success. So that's one really good step. And I'll repeat the guidance I gave a little bit ago. You know, if you really, I know you're going to like the book if you're all interested in helping CEOs and entrepreneurs be more successful. You know, share it with somebody at a chamber of commerce. Share it with somebody with an economic development council. Open up their insights. I think that this is one of the most profound business books that I have ever read, and unfortunately, it's not very well known. I think it's because it was produced by academicians, but it still has more insights and more value than almost any other business book that I've ever read. So share it with other people. Assess your own skill set, your own entrepreneurial success probability based upon the match between who you are and what the business really requires, and then share it with other people. I think that would be great. Next question.
Are there groups to support this type of thinking? Chat groups, Facebook, online, etc.?
I don't know. It's been a few months since I connected with Gregg. And it's about time that I connected with him again here to find out what he has done. I know that he was really focused for the last year or so on the tremendous opportunity he had to work with the province of Saskatchewan. I don't know whether that engagement ended at the end of 2014 and if he's on to his next venture or not. But I don't have this sense that he has a large community of people that are built around this particular book. So I think the answer is I don't know, and I'm not aware of any communities or support networks that are around this other than my own support network with the brilliant business groups on Facebook and on LinkedIn and any other communities that we are creating here at the Hoyt Management Group. Hope that helped. Next question, Stephanie.
Okay. Yes, Michael wants to know, can you clarify the name of the Facebook page again for us?
Yeah, it's facebook.com/groups/brilliant business. If you'll just do a search for Brilliant Business Group or just Brilliant Business in the Facebook search bar, I believe that you'll get that group really quickly. And Mike, if you can't find it some way, just send me a quick email or I'll send you an email back with the link. Or at the end of the day, you can download these slides, and on the slides it has the link, on the first 5 or 10 slides. So I look forward to seeing you in the Brilliant Business Group, Michael. Next question.
Got a comment here. Okay. An important question is whether the benefits of a business compensates the negative impacts on family. It's in some ways not much different from the choices made as employee concerning hours and travel and quality of boss, etc.
It can be, but businesses vary a lot. So certainly with some jobs, they require a lot of overtime. They require a lot of work on holidays and weekends. They require, you to travel, but other jobs do not. I mean, I've had jobs when I first started, 40 years ago or longer working for other people. The job was an 8 to 5 job. You came into the office at 8 o'clock in the morning and you had an hour off for lunch and you left at 5 o'clock, and it was a rare event that you worked any overtime, and we were begging for the opportunity to go to conferences once a year so we could actually get on an airplane and go places. So, and there are other jobs that we have right now. My job, for example, has a lot of freedom and flexibility to it. I get to start whenever I want to in the morning. I get to go as long as I want to in the evenings. I get to work, on weekends if I choose to. And I usually choose to work because I love what I do. But there's a lot of freedom and flexibility in your own business if you choose to have it that way. So if you have a business that has a lot of freedom and flexibility to it and you decide, I'm going to expand my revenues by a factor of 10. And that means that I'm going to get an office, I'm going to hire a few people, then all of a sudden you have intentionally, by your own choice, by your own vision, created a business that has more time constraints on it. Now you have the cash flow requirements of a payroll. Now you have, you need to show up maybe when you're not feeling very good. Now you may need to travel more. You have to do a lot different. If that's your choice to build a larger business, then it also has its lifestyle implications to that choice. If you choose to be the CEO of a $20 million, of a $100 million, of a $500 million business, it is a side effect of that choice that your lifestyle is going to be greatly impacted in that. But it is always a choice. You can always, if you find yourself in a corporate America job that is not suiting your lifestyle, then there are a lot of jobs out there to be had. Or you can start your own business and have even more freedom and flexibility than you have when you're working for somebody else. Great questions and discussions. I really appreciate these questions coming in and the discussion topics too. Next one, Stephanie.
How do we assess our strengths and weaknesses?
In Gregg's system, in his entrepreneurial league system, and in his company, Collaborative Strategies, that's one of the first things they do when they engage with a client is go through a fairly rigorous assessment process to assess the skill set and the educational level of their clients so they know what sort of remedial training is necessary and what sort of advanced training might be really beneficial to the client. We do the same thing at Hoyt Management Group, and we create something called a business foundation profile. The first thing we do is assess the complexity of the business, and then we ask very specific questions relative to the experience and the skill set of the entrepreneur, again, relative to the complexity of the business model. So here's an example. If you want to start a consumer products business, you kind of need to know a little bit about patents and intellectual property protection. So if you came to me and said, I've got this invention and I want to bring it to market, one of my assessment questions is likely to be around your knowledge of intellectual property. Do you understand the patent process? Have you filed a patent before? Do you understand the copyright and trademark process? And have you gone through those before? Because that helps me assess your skill set and your experience relative to what is very likely to be a requirement of your specific business. If you came and said, I have a coaching business, I don't need to ask that question. I don't need to assess your skill set relative to patents because it is extremely rare that somebody who has a coaching business would have anything that is patentable at all. A better question would be, have you had any training and experience in being a great coach? And maybe a question like, have you had any coaches, or how many coaches have you had, or who was your favorite coach and what did you like about them? So we always ask questions when we create what we call a business foundation profile. And I did an office hours presentation on your business foundation profile too. I don't know which one it was, but you can look it up online. As one of the very first points of engagement we have with any one of our clients is really wanting them to understand and for us to understand how their skill set, their mindset, and their experience lines up to the requirements of the business that they have chosen to be in. Thank you for that question. Next question.
Okay. Can you speak about the slide on the pipeline, about how it works for visionaries, but someone needing to chunk the steps out? Where do we start?
Let me see if I'm going to go back to the slide on the pipeline here just for a little bit. I'll come back to this one in a second. So as I look at this pipeline slide, would you repeat that question for me, Stephanie, please? Oops, there it is.
Sure. Can you speak about the pipeline, about how it works for a visionary, someone who needs to chunk the steps out? Where would they start?
I think it starts with an assessment of your business right now. So, for example, if you're in stage 0, you're pre-venture, you haven't done anything at all, you haven't even formed the business yet, your next steps, if you're at that visionary stage, are implied within this is stage 1, stage 2 through stage 5 development, is that we come into existence and then we hit revenues and we're in early growth mode, and then we go into expansion mode and then into maturity mode, and hopefully we can forestall going into decline mode for dozens or hundreds of years. So those are kind of the steps necessary as implied by this pipeline. Now, every system has their own stages of growth. We talk about classes of business, and I did a good presentation, I think, a few weeks ago on the 5 classes of business, where I define the businesses as startup, steady growth, expansion, turnaround, and exit. So I define classes of business slightly different than they do when they talk about the stages of growth of business. But I think the important concept is that businesses go through different stages of growth or stages of existence. And I think that it's useful to think about things like being in turnaround mode. And I think that rapid expansion mode, by the way, is a lot different than normal or organic expansion mode. I did my classification of businesses based upon the mindset requirement of the entrepreneur and the mindset requirement of the coach necessary, because it really does vary according to my classes, I think even more than it does according to his life cycle stages. So there's definitely a difference there. If you're a visionary and you're just getting started, you're either in pre-venture or existence mode. Maybe you've got early revenue, so you're in stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3. My advice is to focus on sales and delivery. My advice for the visionary is, and you'll hear this consistently throughout all of my programs, is engage with the marketplace as quickly as possible so that you can learn the lessons that only the marketplace can teach you. And then once you are in revenue, have a relentless pursuit of financial stability. Because once you hit financial stability, then you have a lot of options. You can simply have a sustainable business. You don't have to have a scalable business. Or if you decide to scale the business, then you've got a foundation of revenues and profits to build upon, which can lead to loans and lead to investors much easier than if you have a startup business. So generally, I'll couple it with that. Think about your business as going through stages. Think about my guidance in terms of engaging with the marketplace as quickly as possible and then having a relentless pursuit of financial stability as being the things that you can focus on. And as always, you're welcome to give us a call or an email. We're happy to walk you through that process and help you with this process. This particular diagram was more intended for communities, counties, cities, states, economic development regions than it was the individual entrepreneur. The intent of this particular diagram was to get a community to think about, in this particular case, the matrix of 30 different cells that you could put a business into so they could assess their portfolio of assets. Do they have a tremendous amount of stage 1 businesses who have tried to start but are not in revenue yet? Do they have a lot of businesses, medium businesses that are in expansion mode, or very large businesses that are in decline mode? And they should take that into consideration. And it's just a little bit of an example. If you were in Detroit, 20 years ago and you did this kind of analysis, what you would probably see is a whole bunch of businesses over here that were stage 4 and stage 5, and they were very large businesses. That you'd have a lot of mature businesses that were, and declining businesses that were very large, and you might see that you don't have very many businesses that are just getting started that are simpler businesses. So if you had that portfolio of entrepreneurial assets approach, and you were, the Detroit City Mayor, you may think, wow, we should really do something to, first of all, stop our very large businesses from declining, and second of all, to really backfill all of that with a portfolio of innovative and young startup businesses so that as these businesses go into maturation and go into decline, they were able to backfill that and create a whole bunch of new jobs. Because when a business is mature and declining, they're likely to actually let go of jobs, and they're actually going to increase the unemployment rate instead of decrease the unemployment rate. So this particular diagram was really focused on taking a portfolio approach to the businesses that are in your specific community. Hopefully that was helpful.
Hey Paul, it's Marcel, and that was very helpful. That was actually my question, and I was actually looking at it from the standpoint that my clients fall all into there. I have some kind of major league hitters that are in various points, and then some rookies. And so I love that graphic. Thank you for sharing that and for that explanation.
That, Marcel, great idea. One thing that I have not done in my own business, for example, is take a look at all of my clients and understand where they are. Most of my clients, by the way, are they're in 0 through 3. I work with a few very mature businesses, but not very many businesses that are in decline. It's only every once in a while that I work with a business that's in exit mode or in turnaround mode, because as a coach and an entrepreneur, I know that my experience, my mindset, my attitude is best spent on these young and expanding businesses as opposed to very large and mature and declining businesses. Just like everybody else in the world, my coaching style, my coaching mindset is not for everybody. I would not be a good coach to a CEO of a Fortune 500 business. I just wouldn't be. I don't really understand what it means to be the CEO of a business like that, and I'm not sure that I could coach somebody effectively as a business coach. I think, by the way, I could coach them very effectively as a personal mentor, as a wisdom coach, so to speak, because I think that transcends the job that you have. But as a business coach, to give them the right business advice, I think that my own particular advice is suited more in the $0 to $20 million, $0 to $30 million marketplace, and that's where I focus all of my marketing activities. So thank you for bringing that up, Marcel. Next question, as I skip back to the last slide here.
Okay, how do I develop my entrepreneurial skills?
So the question was, how do I develop my entrepreneurial skills? Oops. And I think that the first step is assessing your skill set relative to the complexity and the requirements of the business model that you have. But I think the difference, it really depends on the area that you have. So I talk about 7 key performance areas. So to develop your leadership skills, for example, would be to understand what it means to be a great leader, and from my perspective, what it means to be an awakened CEO and what the requirements are, because you might need coaching and mentoring, you might need to read a book, you might need to go to a seminar or a webinar on great leadership to focus in on that. If your gap is in the area of financial management, you may want to listen to my office hours presentation on reading financial statements, or take a class at a community college on general accounting terms and principles, or accounting for executives. I know I've seen courses out there like that too. If your deficiency is in the way of customer service, then you may want to listen to my office hours presentation on having great effective customer service. So it really depends on where the deficiency is or where you see the gap. I like gap is probably a kinder word than the word deficiency. But when you see a gap, when you see an opportunity to increase your own skill set, to increase your own experience, and that will pay dividends for your business, then by all means you can get it, in various places. One thing I would strongly suggest is you take a look at our Awakened CEO Foundations program. That program is designed to teach you in a series of 55 audio tracks of about 4.5 or I think it's about 5.5 actual hours of coaching and education to get you a very good grounding in the fundamentals of business. So if you haven't had that kind of fundamental foundational training, I strongly encourage you to take a look at that program, because that's why I created the program in the first place, was because I realized that so many entrepreneurs did not have that foundational training, and they were essentially jumping into the business and then constantly playing catch up. They didn't know they needed training on great agreements, but until they screwed up with an agreement. They didn't know that they needed training on customer service until they didn't handle something correctly. They didn't know that they needed training in marketing before they realized that they didn't have any leads coming in the door. So it's one thing to assess your skills reactively by saying, hey, I got a problem, I got to fix it. It's quite another thing by being proactive, by working with a coach who can assess your skill set relative to the business that you have. And then I think a very, very good way is to get the foundational training that you really need to understand what it means to be a great CEO and a great small business owner, even before you work with a coach and go through that assessment process. My 2 cents. Stephanie, next question. Do we have any more? I think we got time for one more question. If you're there, I can't hear you.
Okay, why do you call this a science?
So the question is, why do I call it a science? And as it turns out, there are 2 different types of sciences out there. One of the types of science is experimental science, and the other type of science is observational science. So true scientists, as they like to call themselves, people who work with in a laboratory, like to set up experiments where they have a whole bunch of controls and ideally only one variable, and they're able to assess the impact of that one variable based upon the controlled results that they have. And that is a fantastic way of doing science, but it's not the only way of doing science. The other way of doing science is observational science, where you look at the behaviors and the patterns of activities, and you ask people about their feelings and their thoughts and their perspectives, and you draw some conclusions based upon your external observations and on the interviews and the surveys that you do with people. It's not the same type of science at all. Observational science is much different than experimental science. As it turns out, this book, Investing in Entrepreneurs, is a little bit of both. So they did a tremendous amount of observational science, and then they, with grants from like the Kellogg Foundation, they went out to various communities and actually put into practice what they were preaching. And by the way, I haven't said this throughout the webinar, but their results are phenomenal. What they found was that of the people who came into their program, 67% of them who came into the program were still in business 3 years later. General rule of thumb is it's only 50% success rate. So they were phenomenally successful in improving the success rates of businesses in their community, raising the success rate from 50% to 67% by employing their beliefs and their principles and their practices and the systems that they created in this entrepreneurial league system, which, by the way, I've done everything I can to emulate their success and learn what I could from their success when we created the Awakened CEO system and all of the other consulting methodologies that we have. So I think that brings us to a conclusion for today. I hope that you are active in the Facebook group. I really appreciate you either listening to the recording or tuning into our live calls. I'm very passionate about doing everything I possibly can to increase the success rate and reduce the struggle rate of small businesses in America, because I just love almost every CEO or entrepreneur that I ever meet. Until we meet again, this is Paul Hoyt wishing you a most marvelous and prosperous day. Bye-bye.